Hello, hello. Hola, hola, bienvenido. Hi, everyone.
Testing.
If you're waiting for the panel about private voting, you're in the right place. I think we're just missing we're just missing John, one more. I think he's sprinting up on stage. But maybe I can already introduce myself in the panel. My name is Joshua Davila. I am a writer and podcaster for the Blockchain Socialists. As you can maybe tell from my name, I hope, I am a democracy maximalist. I really, really like democracy. I love people giving input, and I love outputs reflecting the will of the people. It's definitely one of the things that inspired me to get into the crypto space, and it's something that I believe the technology crucially should be used for. Not just pump and dump schemes and meme coins, but also for the ability for us to express our desires in ways that are not necessarily always mediated by the market. And one of the things in the crypto space I think that we've been kind of missing when it comes to democracy is the same expectation that we expect out of any sort of national election, which is for our votes to be private. And so I'm here with a couple of smart dudes on the stage with me as well. Lasha from Rarimo, Anthony from Aragon, Jordi from Vocdoni, and John Gilding from PSE, working on MACI. And yeah, the way that I'm going to go about this is I have a few questions and then we'll have some discussion. I really dislike panels that do kind of Q&A style, so I encourage my panelists to interject with each other and be combative and disagree. And so, yeah, maybe we can just get right into it, just as a primer for everyone. Whoever wants to take it, whoever wants to go first can take it. Why does private voting matter, and why couldn't we do it before with crypto? Why is this moment interesting?
Okay. Hey, everybody. Anthony from Aragon here. Why does private voting matter? Simply put, without privacy, it's unlikely that the decisions that are going to be made are going to be made accurately without privacy in play. Meaning people are not going to be as honest about their decisions if everybody can see what that decision is going to be, because there could be reprisals or whatever that might be, and nowhere more do you see that than in our industry, where if somebody doesn't vote yes on somebody else's proposal in a very small community, then everybody gets very upset. And so if you look at probably 99% of proposals out there, probably 99% of people vote yes on 99% of those proposals because nobody wants to be a party pooper. So if we had private voting, you would have much more honest decisions and thus better outcomes.
Can continue? Hi? No? Okay, perfect. Hi everyone, this is Jordi from Vocdoni. I would move a bit, and I think that one of the biggest and most important things about private voting is user protection from the voter and from the organizer. I think it's super important because it protects the voter and the organizer against retaliation. It encourages honest expression. We increase the trustworthiness of the systems because people can actually see that everything is kind of right and they can express themselves in a proper way. And it also prevents vote buying. So I think these properties of protecting the user and also the organizer are really important.
Oh, hello. So yeah, hi everyone. We build the private voting stuff, freedom tool, as a kind of public good. So this is our key from the protocol. But in general, do you know, private voting was invented by Australians? In general, within the ballot boxes, it didn't exist until 1870 or something.
You say Australians?
Yeah, it was called the Australian ballot box, where the first privacy was introduced. And back then, Brits, the power, they were against it. They fought like 30 years until it became a common standard. So privacy had a friction even with the physical ballot boxes, and privacy, but statistically, and I'll just have this kind of historical answer if it's okay. Statistically, what it caused, well, like you had like a upside of like participation, because like you can like coerce and like trace who voted how, and it did really bring this kind of credible neutrality, right? So it was not like I would vote and then I had to like fight for it, but I could vote, decide, and like keep calm and chill, wait the results. So I think it has all the great effects of the modern democracy. We have it, and private voting on chain, that's like, I don't know, there's no alternative to it, especially if we touch the real world and kind of decision making.
Yeah, I think these guys covered most of it. I think the thing that I'll add is, why couldn't we do private voting before? It's been a bit of a technical challenge, being able to have all of the properties we want at like the correct cost on chain. When we started MACI a few years ago, nothing really existed. I think people have figured out like what the good designs are now, where things can scale to millions of users. We've just published a State of Private Voting report 2026, where we've analyzed 12 projects that these guys have contributed to, and the kind of state of things is pretty optimistic. There's also some non-technical reasons why private voting has not been adopted. I think people quite like the fact that we can vote publicly, so there's definitely some work to be done to kind of change that narrative, like we've kind of seen the rise of the privacy meta this year in 2025. We need to also persuade people that voting privately is a good thing. Can go into like various reasons why people think that, but yeah, that's a good non-technical reason why people haven't adopted private voting yet.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been reflecting on is that what private voting allows us to do is also avoid the kind of like toxic positivity, I think, in the crypto space is maybe one thing we can say. Like Anthony was saying, 99% of proposals are yes, because no one wants to publicly say no. Private voting allows some, I guess, some ability to dissent, and I think like maybe Vocdoni's experience in Catalonia and Rarimo's Freedom Tools experience in Russia are two places where, you know, in real terms, not just on DAOs or in crypto spaces, where that matters a lot.
It's 8 to 9 years in prison if they caught you that you participated.
89.
8 to 9.
8 to 9.
Depends
okay.
on the.
Well, and to that point, like, you know, even when in the real world you have polls that are done on elections, right? Polls often are not super accurate, because what happens is they go to your house and they ask you publicly, like, what you're going to vote on, right? And most people are actually less willing to say who they're going to vote on than what they're going to actually vote in private. And so that's why you see this dissonance between actually like what the polls are saying and sometimes what actually happens in votes. So actually, like, often a better methodology is to ask somebody's neighbor what you think that their neighbor is going to vote on, and those polls can often be more accurate. So it goes to that point though, right, where privacy actually allows people to make the decision that they want to make rather than the decision that they think is popular.
I think there's another example which is more like in-house, where women doesn't feel empowered enough, and they vote basically in like more traditional scenarios what the man says, and I think this is a good reason for allowing and to in order to improve and deliver private voting, because I think we will learn a lot from women's opinions that are not like forced to vote in a specific way because of their social environment. And also, I think we're in the best moment of history to apply this kind of voting. All the advancements in applied cryptography, distributed systems, and so on. I think that we kind of democratized this access to private voting, because in the past this was like super expensive, just in the hands of nation states basically and super powerful organizations.
I think we need to go deeper within the private voting. So now we can vote privately, but there's still one little thing remaining where you as a voter still can prove or like show how you voted. I think we need to remove that dependency as well, because it breaks away a lot of like economical kind of backbones that are usually used in melding with elections in real world. So how that works, that like, okay, you go into a private ballot box or you voted, but depending on like the proof that you like literally show that I kind of like voted and stuff, they enforce like a certain agenda over you, they repress people, or there's this entire technique in physical elections where they give you a completely clean ballot. They has not a clean one. They already has a crossed number on the ballot, and they force you to go into the ballot box and take out the clean shit. So you always know that you put the ballot box that they enforce you to do, and you came out with a clean one. So there's like all these techniques that have been like evolved in terms of how people are, and this, like mostly like the repressive states are using these people. So privacy is super important at every stage. So it should be like even not able to be verified for my own keys.
Yeah, I think people kind of forget with in-person election voting, not only is privacy important, and when you go into a voting booth, no one can see what you do, but you're also free from side games like bribery. And we kind of, as mentioned, take that for granted when we vote in person. In a blockchain context, when things are verifiable and transparent, it's very easy to provide a receipt, and collusion could scale very easily because it's very simple to kind of write smart contracts that automate this bribery that happens. We haven't seen too much in the past, or too much collusion kind of scares with blockchain voting. We would view it like in order to get to the maximum kind of pinnacle of on-chain private voting, we need these anti-collusion properties. We've kind of seen the beginning of this year. There's a team called Anti-Capture that engaged in a vote-buying exercise to kind of prove that this is an attack vector a few months ago. So they bought some votes as part of an Arbitrum DAO vote and impacted the result of the vote. So we haven't seen too much of this kind of use case in the past, but maybe we're seeing the beginnings now, and definitely having these anti-collusion properties is like a critical part for private voting. It's not just being able to vote privately.
Yeah, so I'll definitely want to get into some stuff about anti-collusion. I think there's something interesting about privacy. Right now, at the moment, voting in the blockchain space is really like, you can always wrap around it and put a price. There's always a price to someone's votes possible in many DAOs, and oftentimes that's kind of like outwardly encouraged through various systems where there are essentially bribe markets, and that's, because it's a financial application, they kind of accept that happens. But that's not like, I wouldn't call that very democratic, and I wouldn't call that ideal for many other use cases for voting. But maybe first I wanted to talk a bit about the differences between the protocol level of voting and the application layer of voting. I'm just curious from your guys' perspective, if you guys have any thoughts on which part of the layer is maybe is more difficult, perhaps. The protocol is something that I think we've in part been able to achieve. Like Jordi said, we now not just nation states are able to facilitate even a private vote or centralized systems or what have you. Now we can do it, and so now we can build the applications for that. But I imagine that's also like it's new territory at the moment. But I'm curious if you guys have a thought on which one is more difficult to kind of make.
Maybe I can explain about our context. So I think one of the biggest problems we encountered is in two layers, so the social one and the application one. So I think even that we got better and better on providing a good user experience to the voter, we're still struggling to provide like a one-click UX for voting privately. And this stops a lot of people from voting. Not that much in DAOs, but a lot in the let's say real world scenarios, and also in the social layer. There have been a lot of attempts of doing private voting in the wild, and we failed during the past 20 years. So people are a bit reluctant, and it's difficult to gain their trust, to make them to trust the system, because we failed so many times that now it's difficult. And I think these are kind of the main problems we encounter in our context.
Yeah, I think at a pure technical level, we've got all the building blocks in place. We've got the cryptography. We've got some of the protocols being built. I think 2026 will be the year that the protocols that are going to production now will really come to fruition. And then after these protocols have gone to production, people need to do some work to implement them in all of the DAO tooling providers, so in Aragon, Tally, Snapshot, Agora. And I think that's when we'll see like the ability to plug and play private voting into DAOs. But in terms of like a technical level, I think we're there. There's definitely some interesting but future potential work that we can still do. Just like Ethereum has to be quantum resistant, our private voting protocols will need to be quantum resistant. Various improvements can be made to the UX, like as you mentioned, doing it in one click, improving the DevX of using these protocols as well. And yeah, as kind of briefly mentioned before, like selling the fact that private voting is a good thing, actually.
Do you have any thoughts?
I think like the good news, I have a good news and a bad news. Good news is that technically, actually voting, private voting, all that primitives, we pretty well build out on the level of the protocol, like vote counting, like how do we smart contracts, everything is there. Another piece that was missing and like all of us here contributing last year and that has been like going was this another layer, which is like identification layer, where we enable not only kind of token-based voting for whatever, but the real people and real identities to be brought in, like passports, biometry and stuff, and still maintain this full anonymity and decentralization so systems couldn't be shut down. So in a way, if you look from a technical package perspective, it's ready. It's like it's out there to destroy something, but we don't know yet like how to deploy it in real world. So what is the context, right? How to build out the trust that is away from the technical challenges and what works, what's not. Like, is it purely political? Is it more like a coordination aspect? Is it more like to distinguish between this I don't know, like echo chambers of different narratives versus the truth, what people believe. So I think like we're at this moment when we should take this technology and not just like brand it as a voting, but more like okay, it's like a kind of truth measurement in different forms and iterate on this. But that's a heck load of a challenge, and that's basically the friction point in my opinion.
It's identity.
Yeah, of course. Because like, if you ask me, okay, we figured out the fintech and like all this, how the money should move and exchange, but voting, if done right, is the second biggest use case for the blockchain. And identity plus voting and the privacy, it all comes together. So it's one of the largest and biggest coordination layers we never had before. It was like an exclusive function of either a government, state, or like some kind of like small platform for run this coordination layer. And for the first time, like we had an incredibly neutral infrastructure for money, we have a credibly neutral infrastructure for coordination. And especially as this craziness of the AI and like narrative wars continues, this will become the only space where the genuine sentiment could be measured in different forms. So I don't think what could be bigger than this.
I don't think the right term actually is coordination. I think that term's overly used because there's no difference between coordinating off-chain and on-chain, to be frank, but I get where you're going with it. The point is the primitive that's new is execution, right? Off-chain, any form of execution requires a trusted intermediary. It's the same with DeFi. It's the same here with decision making, right? You can actually execute on decisions without a trusted intermediary, right? That's extremely powerful. That is a new primitive. And that's why it's so, and also that's why it's so complicated. So yes, to the question of, yes, okay, it's complex from a technological perspective. That's true. From a UX perspective, that's true. If you add anything in the way of somebody voting or add any level of friction, you see a huge drop in participation. But way more complex than that is the fact is actually the governance, which what voting helps achieve, is what's built on top. Is the fact that governance is an infinite design space. built on top of a large design space, which is what is it governing, right? Which is products, protocols, etc. And so when you combine those two, you get a really, really, really complex problem that you need to solve and structure. And that's super complicated. And so everything impacts, you know, each layer is impacted of what you're governing and who is governing what. And so it's really, really, really challenging. And that's the problem. And then, you know, you get these tough requirements. And then, okay, now you have to replicate that from a technological perspective and a UX perspective. And yeah, it really snowballs from there. And that's why I think to date, it's been very challenging to have like private on-chain execution and governance really become mainstream.
But I think, yeah, so I mean, definitely here, execution is kind of like the new thing that we've got now for sure. I think identity is something maybe I want to dig into a little bit more on how we can solve this problem, because it's kind of like on the surface it sounds very paradoxical that you need identity, which is the opposite of privacy, and then you have private voting. Like you need to always you need to define your demos, right?
It depends on the environment and the context we're using. So Freedom Tool is purely for real world voting. So all the use cases that have been done, it was some kind of nation-based like digital protest or like come out to sign a petition or those type of things. So their identity in the form of the passport was super important. Unfortunately, I have to mention like that most of the people who were kind of brave enough to use this technology and like to start distributing with their context, it was highly political. I don't know, one of them is in jail, and I just have to highlight like seriousness of like the stuff they were doing. Another one is in exile, who is like sentenced 11 years and within this kind of terrorist list by one of the authoritarian states. I'm not going to go into names, but this was the kind of reality of the people that were trying to deploy within their societies. An identity in the form of the nation identity and the genuine signal to get from their supporters was this environment it was deployed. So that's why passports played a crucial role in unlocking this type of interaction.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems of identity is flexibility. Not all the organizations have the same requirements on identification. And also, I think we cannot expect to have a unified cross-border identity in all of the world. So I think we should be adapting to each organization. And for example, even if the passport and electronic ID use case is super important and it's one of the best identification ways you have, then when you go to a country, you see that most of the people don't have a passport, or some of them don't have like an electronic digital identity. So for example, here in Argentina, we try to do some experiments with digital identity, and the Documento Nacional de Identidad is not it's not digitally signed, and it's super difficult because who here have a passport? Maybe us because we are traveling and we require it, but you don't have like this unified identity system that you can use. I think it's really important that we take into account that we should create things on top of flexible identity systems.
Or we scan our eyeballs into the orb.
Oh, they won't solve the national identification problem.
Yeah, proof of personhood and identity is one of the harder problems in crypto. We recently did like a bit of an experiment with human tech and human passport as we were running the Gitcoin privacy round. Obviously, like passports and ZK passport could work quite well for like national elections. When you need like cross-national votes or DAO votes, you need proof of personhood. I think the approach that they've got is quite good. So you can have like your ID verified. I think a recent feature that they've just released is like ZK email proofs. So you can like use ZK email to prove you've got like 5 emails from Uber or Amazon, and that builds up your score. So that's really good. And then I think one issue is like you just want to reduce the damage that people who break into the system can do. So like even if you have this proof of personhood score and you've got a score above 20, people can still break into the system by like farming face IDs, a bit like what happened with WorldCoin, where people in like countries where the cost to bribe people for their faces is very low, like hey, I'll give you $2 to scan your face, and then you can just like farm IDs quite easily. That's quite a hard attack vector to protect against. I think human tech have some kind of like data analytics that detect like, hey, like these IDs were created at the same time using the same mechanism, like let's block those. And then, yeah, just like reducing the damage that these, exploring ways to reduce the damage that these like attackers could do. One maybe more like niche but interesting approach with the Gitcoin privacy round that we did is like, yes, people could generate like fake IDs, but the voting mechanism we used was quadratic voting, which incentivizes broad support rather than putting all of your eggs in one basket. So even if you successfully create 50 fake IDs, you're disincentivized to put all of your eggs in one basket, and you're actually, the kind of like attack that you can pull off isn't as effective because the voting mechanism used forces you or incentivizes you to spread your vote more broadly. Maybe a more niche example, but that's maybe how we can think about these things and like think of ways to reduce the possible damage that people can do, a bit like with collusion resistance as well.
Yeah, I hope some of you guys were able to take part in the private voting rounds that that MACI and Privote ran. I'm very biased. I got a little bit of money from it because people voted for me, but it was very well run. But one of the, so we're nearing the end, so I kind of wanted to skip to my spicier questions maybe. The spicy question that I have, I think I'm noticing and hearing is that private voting is not it's not purely a technological problem, it's also a very political one, which is, I think, very interesting just because generally, historically in the crypto world, if you talk to a lot of crypto people, they'll say, no, there's no politics here. We're just talking technology, right? There's nothing, don't ask me who I voted for, whatever. But in this case, it is very political, and it's something that I think we need to embrace and just think about directly, or else we're just not going to solve what we're trying to solve for. But when thinking about this question about politics, I mean, MACI, it's anti-collusion. I kind of want to ask, like, is all collusion bad? I think that there's maybe a case for collusion, as in the case of the creation of social movements. But I'm wondering, you know, so the question, whether or not collusion is bad, and whether or not, or like how you guys are thinking about collusion specifically.
Yeah, I guess the initial comment is collusion is just another form of coordination. You can have good coordination, bad coordination. An interesting example we spoke about the other day at a workshop was US members of Congress, and how over time, maybe like 200 years ago, members of US Congress didn't really coordinate with each other. And over the next like 100 years up until today, coordination is very common in Congress. Like, hey, you've got your proposal, I'll vote for that, I've got mine, you vote for this. And that could be good or bad. Like maybe this is to defeat the other party because you think you're right. Maybe it's to start factions, and it's for lobbying. So I think for me it's 50-50. Like you can have like good collusion and bad collusion. We want to stop the bad types and encourage the good types.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think what we call politics today is basically an open and transparent way of colluding. I think that collusion is bad in bad examples, like when it's coercive or you want to bribe someone. So then I think collusion is a bad thing, but not per se. Even though we should work on this on the private voting realm, because, I mean, we should be prepared for these bad cases.
Yeah, I mean, as a good Swiss person, I'll be neutral on this question and say yes, that it's not good or bad. But that's the truth of the matter. I mean, I think the goal is about the outcome. I think the much larger issues particularly in our industry regarding voting is that voting so far hasn't meant anything, which is sort of sad. But voting hasn't. There's been very few times where voting actually had, on-chain executable powers, and thus you see that voting has sort of decreased over time. And I don't think privacy necessarily is going to fix that. We need to get the incentives right first to create meaningful and valuable tools and products that can be governed by potentially voting. By whatever input that is, if it's tokens, which is very common now, that those tokens then have some value. And then I think you'll all of a sudden see that with people having skin in the game, they'll actually start to participate because they care, because they're personally affected by that. And then that's when privacy would be more important to factor in And then one can decide if collusion is important or not at that aspect.
20 seconds.
Yeah, me as a fellow Eastern European, I have different type of problems. My problem is that, like, whether I'm not talking about the token, I'm talking about real life. My problem is that every 10 years, a government takes over the ballot boxes, and then there's a kind of a death fight until you kind of have another rotation of the power and stuff. So the system of initial democracy, institutional democracy that was given us, and over years, some folks in a certain time span figured out how to overtake it. So I'm looking at this technology pretty political. And the idea is that to take it into a neutral hands, and us as a community being able to operate this very simple and easy layer of holding elections or like protests or signing petitions and show the numbers, because at the end of the day, democracy is a numbers game. So whoever is good in math, and we can be good in math and show that, is going to win. And I believe in this type of like implementation, and that's what my primary problem I'm trying to solve is.
Well, I think we are at the time now. So thank you guys for coming on.
Can I drop a quick shill?
Quick shill.
This is highlighting the work that all of these guys have done here. If you're interested in the state of private voting and where we are today, go to pse.dev, check out our blog, and we've got a 70-page report that you can dig into, and it covers everyone's work here sitting at this panel. So please check it out if you're interested.
It's a great report.
It's a good report, guys.
Excellent
Thanks.
report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.